is influencing. Yeah, so users want to interact with your site. They don't want to just, look at a bunch of text. They want to like click on the text. Oh, come on, really? Is this on? Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so users want to interact with the site. They want to click on stuff. They want to drag stuff around. They want to hover and type keys and all that sort of good stuff. So you want to be able to somehow react to those kinds of inputs and move stuff around on your HTML page in response to that kind of thing. So this is what jQuery is for. And jQuery is a JavaScript library. And the library is just code that helps you write more code. And it has a lot of useful stuff that makes things easier for you. And I'll show you that in a couple seconds. Right. So first, to use jQuery, we need to include it into our HTML page. So jQuery is a separate file somewhere, and it doesn't come with your HTML automatically. So you need to tell your HTML file, okay, I want to use jQuery's library. So the way you do that is with the script tag like this. So you generally put it inside the head, and it says, okay, I want to include this script into my file, and it does that by going to this address, which is kindly hosted by Google, and it grabs that file and puts it into your page. So now you have access to all of jQuery's methods. We'll go over some of them in a few seconds. Yeah. So now what you need to do is you need to write your JavaScript. So first you need to create a new file that will hold your JavaScript and include it into your HTML, the same way as jQuery. So the way we do that is very much the same. So for example, if we wanted to include the workshop starter JS file, we just include it with the script tag like this. And yeah, so HTML is a little weird in that, well, I guess it's kind of normal, but it loads in sequential order. So it starts from the top, and then it goes all the way down and loads everything. So this means that it loads everything in the head first, and then it loads everything in the body. So everything in the body is all the divs and paragraphs and everything that we talked about in the HTML lecture. And the head has a bunch of like CSS links and JavaScript links and some metadata that might be useful for you. So the problem here is if you want to interact with your HTML page in your JavaScript file, well, it loads the JavaScript file first, but then none of the stuff that it wants to interact with in the body has loaded yet. So it's just like, I can't find any of the stuff, and then I give up. So you kind of have to do this thing where you say, okay, wait for the document to finish loading. So what this says is when the body is done loading, then run all my code that I want to run. And this fixes that problem. The other option is if you just put the script tag at the end. So here we're loading workshop starter at the end of the body, and that means that everything else above it has finished loading, so then all that stuff exists for you to interact with. Yeah, so either way will work. It's really up to you which one you want to do. So as I mentioned before, jQuery makes things a lot easier when you want to select certain parts of your web page. So as Eric demonstrated earlier, yeah, you can like grab stuff using the document object, and without jQuery, with regular JavaScript in your browser, you have to do something like document.getElementBy, and then all this other stuff that's kind of long. And because we're developers, we're really lazy, right? So we just want to make it as simple as possible to do this sort of thing. And we can do it by doing this $sign and then passing in the CSS selector that we want. So in this case, we pass in .box as a string, and what this says is get me all elements in my page that have class box. That's it. And then down here, similar thing, it grabs all the paragraph elements, adding another class and adding some text, and so on, and then you just append everything together like this. So you're just taking your H1 and your paragraph, and you're just sticking it inside the header thing. And then you can take this and append it to your web page. Yeah. So the main reason why people would use jQuery is to interact with users. And users can input into your web page a variety of ways. So these are called events. And there are a lot of types of events, like clicking, hovering, key pressing, and other stuff. So, for example, if we wanted some code that would run when the user clicks a button, we want to print yay, say, for example. So the first thing we need to do is we need to define an event. So first thing we need to do is define a function that prints yay. So all this function does is it prints yay to the console. That's it. Okay. So the next step is we want to listen for the click event on the button, or whatever HTML that we care about. So first we select it using jQuery like this. So here we're getting the HTML element with ID button, and then we're using jQuery's .on function, and this attaches an event listener for the event click. So whenever you click on this button, then it will do something. And in this case, we want the function to be run is cheer, which prints EA to the console. So what this does is, whenever someone clicks the button, it'll run cheer. Does that make sense? Yeah. So as we mentioned before, you can pass around these functions like objects. So here is the callback function that we talked about earlier. Yeah.
Sorry, hashtag button is ID.
Yeah. 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 So as I mentioned before, this is a callback function. Yeah. What's up?
What is it that jQuery can do that not others?
So everything that you can do in JavaScript. Yeah. So I believe JavaScript can do everything that jQuery can, but jQuery makes things a lot easier to do. So there are functions that jQuery exposes to you that would take a lot more JavaScript to write and are not as easy to use. So like there are like problems with it or something like that. So jQuery makes it easier to do a lot of things. You don't have to use it, but we really recommend it because it helps with like keeping your code size not terribly large. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. So as we mentioned before, we can also put this cheer function inside an anonymous function. So this does the same thing as this one. It's really up to you which one you want to use, matter of preference. Okay, so now let's do some live coding, which will be fun, I guess. Okay, yeah. All right, let's see. Oops. Okay, can you read this? Okay, so let's say I have this cute input box right here, and I want it so that whenever I type something in this box, oops. Okay, whenever I type something in this box, the text should show up below the box. Okay, so how would we do this kind of thing? So we kind of want to use, an event listener whenever the user presses a button, right? So whenever they type something, we want the web page to react in some way. So let's look at the HTML that we have. It's right here. So as you can see, I've already loaded the jQuery library like this. And I've also loaded an index.js file, which we will put our stuff in. The code that will react to our inputs. And then here's some HTML that we have. So this is the container. This is this black box we have like this. And then we have the input field right here. And then this nice little div here where we will put our text. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at our index.js file. So right now it just looks like this, very bare bones. When the document is ready, we'll just console.log ready to the console. So we can see how that works here. Okay, so in our console, if we refresh, then it prints ready to the screen. Okay. All right, so now we're ready to write some code. Okay, so we want to figure out how to react when a user presses a key. So jQuery React user. No, okay. Typing is hard. Okay. So it looks like we can use this really nice function right here, .keypress, and we pass it in some event handler or listener. So in this case, we want to do something that grabs the text from the input and puts it inside our display div. In our previous example, it was the one that console.log EA. So we'll use this function. So first we need to get the element that we care about. So in this case, the input right here, and it has a class of input. So we can just select it like this. Okay, so now we have that. And we want to use our keypress function, so we can do .keypress. And according to the documentation, we pass it in an event listener, or event handler. So we can define an anonymous function like this. Okay, So now we can write like what happens when we press a key. So when we press a key, first we want to get the text inside our input. So let's see how we can do that. And we can do that using this val function, which gets the text inside the input. It says so right here somewhere. Yeah. So that's the same like this, and then we can use that val. So this is the text that we want. So we can just do that. Okay, so now we're putting it inside this text variable. And we can verify that this does work. So if we copy this part and put it inside our Chrome inspector, like this. Okay, right now it's empty, but if I type like, and then paste it again. Okay, great, so it seems to be working. Oops. Okay, all right. So now that we have this text, we want to put it inside our div with the class display. So let's take a look at how we would do that. Insert text into div, JQuery. Okay, and we can look at this function, .text, and this part here says we can set the text contents of any matching elements. Okay, great. So it looks like if we just pass in the text, we can set the text like this. Okay, so we can select the display. Oops, that's not where we want to put it. Like this. So it has class display, if you remember. It looks like this. So it has class display. And then we can set the text using .text. And then pass in the text that we care about, like this. Okay, great. So now we can test and see if this works. So if we go back to our web page, okay, it seems to have run out of space. There we go. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's a quick primer about how you would Google for documentation and look at and write some jQuery code. All right. So now let's do a quick workshop.